Hi, friends. Hi, my friends.
Hi, friends.
Hey João, hey Norah.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay.
That good? Good. Have you seen that video where a lady tells that she's good, and then um, her friends tell her, "How are you?" and then she starts crying.
Oh, yes, no,
First,
mama.
first she
She
says,
was
"I'm,
holding
I'm
up.
fine," and then her friend tells her,
Oh no, we missed the
"How
joke.
are you?" And then she starts crying. So we are here because we're very happy to be here talking about this amazing book, Paul and Stephen. We are in day 20. Thank the Lord. We have been recording and studying together all this year. We're tonight actually in this afternoon, beginning the month of October. So we're really happy and proud of this project. And at the end of the day, we are the ones who have received this gift of studying this amazing book.
All right, dear brother João, I think you're cutting off, but
Sorry, guys, my internet connection went off, but it's back. Can you guys hear me?
we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that we are the ones receiving this gift of studying this amazing book since we are. Sorry, guys, my internet connection is a little weird today. But so I was saying that we are the ones who are receiving this gift of studying this amazing work of art, which was received mediumistically by our beloved Chico Xavier. So today, as always, we're gonna before we start, our great friend Norah will bring us some prayer so we can get more relaxed, get calmer, and then start properly talking about this amazing book without any further ado. Okay?
All right. Let us get into this beautiful energy, thanking Mother, Father, God, and our mentor spirits for this precious and blessed opportunity to study together. We kindly ask for inspiration, for enlightenment, that we have a beautiful message today as we're learning, dear God, to constantly, every day, reframe and redefine ourselves as Christians, as children of God. And we thank you for this book. We ask for all of those that are listening live, on demand, or spirit friends too, that we all just unite together in this beautiful chain of harmony and love to study and grow. I say the Hail Mary prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. With that, we ask permission to begin, and so be it.
So be it. Thank you, dear. Beautiful. Guys, so we're continuing the book. Last week with Daniel, we saw that Saul was shocked. The Church of the Way was completely different from what he had seen before. Something was missing. The overall ambient seemed to be suffocating all notions of the Nazarene. He no longer found there the great feeling of fraternity and the unification of principles for spiritual independence. After giving it some thought, he attributed it all to Stephen's absence. And he's the one who made that. After his death, the power of the gospel of freedom had been extinguished, for he had been the divine yes of renewal. Only now was Saul able to evaluate the greatness of Stephen's exalted task. Saul wanted to speak as he had in Damascus, to lash out the errors at the errors of interpretation, to shake out the dust that had accumulated over Christ's immense and sacred ideal. But he remembered Peter's advice and kept still. It was not right for the time being. to reproach others' behavior when he did not yet have any deeds testifying to his own renewal. If he tried to speak, he would perhaps receive fully justified criticism in return. Additionally, he noticed that people he recognized from the past and who now attended the church without giving up their previous erroneous principles were looking at him suspiciously without hiding their contempt. They regarded him as mentally disturbed. It took a supreme effort to stifle the desire to cross swords right then and there for the restoration of the pure truth. After that first meeting, Sal looked for an opportunity to be alone with Peter to ask him about the changes. The storm that came upon us, explained Peter kindly, without mentioning Sal's former conduct, led me to ponder matters deeply. Guys, there's a very interesting fact about this book because we're seeing Saul of Tarsus in one side and James at the other. And the friend, Chico Xavier's friends, they tell us that Chico always used to say that that it was Peter because he could, at that moment of his life, ponder things in a more just and honest way. Going ahead. After the Sahindra's first raid on this place, I watched as James underwent a profound transformation. He turned to a life of strict asceticism and as an unyielding obedience to the law of Moses. I pondered this change of attitude for quite some time. But on the other hand, I remembered that he was not a bad person. He was a zealous friend, devoted and loyal. I kept quiet and later concluded that everything was happening for a reason. When the persecutions tightened around us, James' attitude had its beneficial side, although not very laudable in the light of the freedom of the gospel. The severest persecutors respected his devotions to the law, and his sincere friendships within Judaism enable us to safeguard Christ's legacy. This is very interesting because I'm not gonna give spoilers, but later we're gonna see that James' attitude was really necessary, and we're gonna see a very nice moment between Paul of Tarsus and James. Um, let me go on. John and I anguished for hours over the matter. Were we being insincere or falsifying the truth? Anxiously, we prayed for the Master's inspiration. With the help of his divine light, we came to a judicious conclusion. Would it be right for the still tender grapevine to strive without the stalwart fig tree? If we were to obey our personal impulse to fight the enemies of the freedom of the gospel, we would forget our community work, and that would be fatal. It is not right for the steersman to want to show off his excellent nautical abilities and cast the boat against the shoals, thereby bringing harm to the lives of those who had trusted in his efforts. Thus, we realize that the problems were many faced, and although our ability to act was severely reduced, we needed to preserve the still fragile tree of the gospel for those who would come after us. Besides, Jesus taught us that we would achieve lofty objectives in this world without if only if we gave something of ourselves. Through James, Pharisaism has agreed to walk with us. Well, then, in keeping with the Master's teachings, we will walk all the miles possible. I even realized that if Jesus was teaching us in this manner, it was because that on this journey we have the opportunity to teach something and and to reveal who we are. While Saul looked at him with even greater admiration for his judicious ideas, the apostle concluded, "These too shall pass. The work is Christ's. If it were ours, we would surely fail. However, we are nothing more than simple and imperfect co-workers. Saul internalized the lesson and retired thoughtfully. In his mind, Peter seemed much greater now. That composure, that ability to understand the smallest facts gave Saul an idea of his profound spiritual enlightenment. With his health restored, but before any decision about his next move, Saul wanted to see Jerusalem again on the natural impulse of affection for the places that had given rise to so many fond memories. He visited the temple and experienced conflicting emotions. He lacked the courage to enter the Sanhedrin but he anxiously sought out the synagogue of the Cilicians, where he thought he might re-encounter the affable friendships of times gone by. However, even there, where his fellow countrymen living in Jerusalem got together, he received an icy reception. Nobody invited him to speak. Only a few who knew his family shook his hand dryly, ostensibly avoiding his company. When the religious service was over, the more cynical asked him questions with scornful smiles. His conversion at the gates of Damascus was commented upon with hurtful, degrading words. Mightn't have been some kind of spell by the sorcerers of the way? Asked some. Mightn't it have been Demetrius dressed up like Christ to dazzle his ill and tired eyes? Asked others. He perceived the irony of which he was the object. They treated him as a demented. Unable to bridle the impulsiveness of his honest soul, he daringly mounted a platform and spoke proudly. Brothers of Cilicia, you are mistaken. I am not mad. Do not seek to interrogate me, because I know you and I know the extent of Pharisaic hypocrisy. A battle ensued immediately. Old friends voiced loud insults. Those more moderate surrounded him as they would an ill person and told him to shut up. Saul had to make a heroic effort to contain his indignation. With difficulty, he controlled himself and laughed. Back out on the street, he was assailed with scathing thoughts. Wouldn't it be better to fight openly, to preach the truth with no consideration for the religious masks that fill the city? In his eyes, it was right to think about declaring open war on the errors of Pharisaism. And what if, contrary to what Peter had suggested, he were to become the head of a larger movement in Jerusalem on behalf of the Nazarene? Hadn't he had the courage to persecute his disciples when the rest of the doctors of the Sanhedrin were all complacent? Why not assume a reparative posture now by heading a counter movement? He would find some friends to join him in his ardent efforts. With this gesture, he would be helping his own brothers in their worthy labor on behalf of the needy. Fascinated with such prospects, he entered the famous temple. He remembered the old days of his childhood and youth. The movement of the people inside no longer awakened his interest and as it had in the past. Instinctively he approached the place where Stephen had succumbed. He remembered the heart-rending scene detail by detail. Grievous anguish filled his soul, and he prayed fervently to Christ. He entered the room where he had been alone with Abigail, listening to the last words of the martyr of the gospel. He finally grasped the greatness of that soul who had forgiven him in extremis. Each word of the dying man now resounded strangely in his ears. Stephen's spiritual loudness fascinated him. The preacher of the way had sacrificed himself for Jesus. Why shouldn't he do the same? It would be right to stay in Jerusalem to follow his heroic steps so that the master's lessons could be understood and applied. He would be the first to as he recalled the so luminous form appears suddenly next to him, is speaking with ineffable tenderness. Leave Jerusalem. Your former colleagues will not accept your testimony for the time being. Under the canopy of Jesus, Stephen was accompanying Saul's steps along his path of discipleship despite the transcendental nature of his invisible assistance. Of course, Saul thought that Christ himself was the author of the loving counsel, and deeply impressed, he went to the Ways Church to tell Simon Peter what had happened. Nevertheless, he finished, telling the kind apostle who was listening to him in wonder, I can't hide the fact that I intend to stir up the religious thought of the city, defend the master's cause, and re-establish the truth in its complete form. Now the great gospel preacher is born. While the ex fisherman listened to him in silence as if to reinforce his response, the new disciple continued. Didn't Stephen hand himself over to be sacrificed? I feel that we now need courage equal to that of the martyr who succumbed to the stones of my ignorance. No, Saul, said Peter firmly. It would not be reasonable to believe that. I have more experience in life, although I do not have of your wealth of intelligence. It is written that the disciple cannot be greater than the master. Right here in Jerusalem, we saw Judas fall into such a trap during the pain-filled time of Calvary, when the Lord proved the excellence and divinity of his love, while we proved the bitter testimony of our meager faith. We condemned our unfortunate friend. Some of our brothers still hold to their initial opinions, but in my contact with the reality of the world, I came to the conclusion that Judas was more unfortunate than evil, and this is a big truth. He didn't believe in the value of deeds without getting paid for them, nor did he accept a power other than that of the princes of the world. He was eager for the immediate triumph of Christ's ideas. Many times we saw him arguing impatiently for the building of Jesus' kingdom according to the political principles of the world. As someone who was in charge of his divine plan, the master would smile and pretend not to understand the insinuations. Before becoming a disciple, Judas was a merchant. He was used to selling goods and receiving immediate payment. And as I reflect upon it nowadays, Judas was not able to understand the gospel in any other way. This is beautiful. He could not grasp the fact that God is a creditor full of mercy, kindly waiting for all of us who are nothing more than miserable debtors. Perhaps he loved the Messiah profoundly. I do believe that. However, his eagerness made him miss a sacred opportunity. Due only to his desire to hasten victory, he engineered the tragedy of the cross with his lack of vigilance. Saul was surprised as he listened to these just remarks while the kind apostle continued. God is providence for all of us. None no one is forgotten. In order to judge the situation better, let's say that you were more fortunate than Judas. Let's say that you were personally victorious in what you have proposed to do. And let's say that you were able to attract the entire city to the master. Then what? Should you and could you answer for all who responded positively to your efforts? The truth is, you might attract them, but you could never convert them. Since it would not be possible for you to attend to all of them individually, you would wind up being hated just the same. If Jesus, who could do everything in this world under the auspices of the Father, in waiting patiently for the conversion of the world, why can't we wait also? The best position in life is one of balance. See, that's why Chico Xavier used to say that he loved Peter. It is not just a matter of wanting to do either less or more than what we can. Even the master stated that each day has enough troubles of its own. Saul was overly surprised. Simon Peter's arguments were irrefutable. His inspiration amazed Saul. Now I pass the word to Daniel.
Thanks, João. So, in light of what happened, continued the ex-fisherman calmly, it would be better if you were to leave as soon as night falls. The, the fight you started in the Sicilian synagogue is much more serious than the one in Damascus. It's possible that they will try to arrest you tomorrow. Besides, the warning you received in the temple is not such that we can put off making the necessary arrangements. Saul agreed with the suggestion wholeheartedly. Rarely in life had he heard such sensible remarks. "Do you intend to return to Sicilia?" asked Peter in fatherly tone of voice. "I have nowhere else to go," answered Saul, smiling resignedly.
We can't hear, brother.
I said that
You can
he's
hear me?
frozen, but okay, now we can. Now we can. You're back.
Oh, something is going on.
Yes. The internet
So
connection
let
here in Brazil is a little is a little slow.
let me try this. I think I will stop again. Just a minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
No,
can, but
frozen?
yeah, no, we can, but your camera is frozen. But
Also,
if you like, you can close your camera and keep talking. Okay, don't worry.
Oh, okay. So that's
Yes.
I have to go on this way.
Okay.
Just a minute. So I have to. Okay. So Simon Peter's plan was followed to the letter. That night, as Jerusalem was enveloped in dead silence, a humble rider passed through the city gates and headed to the great port of Palestine. Tormented by the
Yes, guys, I think it's about the internet connection. It's and the elections are tomorrow here in Brazil, so things are pretty agitated.
okay. So
Let's see if he
we'll
it will.
continue reading, and when he comes back,
Okay, okay,
okay.
okay.
So, tormented by constant apprehension of his new life, Saul arrived in Caesarea, determined not to stay there very long. He delivered Peter's letters recommending him to his loyal friends. He was received amicably by all and had no difficulty in taking the road to his hometown. So now the way Emmanuel describes this chapter, I mean, this section is really nice. He's going to go back to his childhood home as he's heading over, and he's remembering things, as a child, like that, the memory of the mom and the activities with the dad and everything, right? So you can imagine he's going to head over to visit his father. So he has the expectations, even though we had read before, right, that his dad was not happy about now Saul preaching, in the name of the Nazarene. But he was still very hopeful, right, about
Yes.
this.
Dear,
Do we?
dear, just 1 minute, bro. Are you back here? Are you listening to us? Do you want to keep on going?
No,
Because I
I'm
saw that
listening.
you
I'm
yes,
back.
I saw that you managed
Can
to work things
can
out there.
Nora go on so I'll comment later?
Okay, okay, great.
Okay.
I think
Thanks.
you can.
Thanks, Nora.
No, no, it's good. That's it. That was just basically the background. And now I think Daniel's going to read us the conversation between Saul and his dad, where it says, "My son," he exclaimed. You see that part, brother, where it says, "My son," he exclaimed?
Yes, I think it's pretty tricky there for him
Okay.
to keep
So
on
you
yeah,
want
to
to
keep
do
on
like
going.
who do you want to be? Do you want to be Saul? Or do you want to be the dad?
Okay, let me just put my book in position here. Okay.
Okay, let's where he
In
comes
which
back.
page are you so we can go ahead?
Page 316, where it says,
That's nice. Okay.
knocking on the door, so we can do the whole, right? So we can
Okay.
imagine Saul knocking. He has the memories because that's the way Emmanuel puts us in that mind frame. Like he's really
Yes,
setting
yes,
up
totally.
a setting for us to imagine going back to his childhood home.
So
So
since Nora is a much more elevated spirit than me, she's gonna be Saul of Tarsus, and I'm gonna be the father. Okay.
I was going to say the other way, but okay.
Where are you, dear? My
My son,
son, he exclaimed. Okay.
go for it.
My son, he exclaimed with a steady voice, trying to control his emotion. Could it be that my eyes deceived me?
Saul embraced him affectionately, um, and went inside. Isaac sat down and then, with a tone of criticism, asked, "Could it really be?
Could it really be that you have been, yes, could it really be that you have been healed?
My father,
To
have
solve
pity."
such a question,
Oh, sorry. My father, have pity and welcome me. I've never been
can
ill,
I, was yet
but my
another.
spirit is now in need. I don't think I can start over in life without some rest. Please help me out.
Knowing his father's austerity and the extent of his own needs at that difficult time, the ex doctor of Jerusalem humbled himself completely, putting into his voice all the weariness contained in his soul. The old Israelite contemplated him firmly and solemnly and asked without compassion, "You
All right, so let's continue, friends. He'll
were
come.
never ill, meant
Both
to
of
be
you are
ill."
freezing. So then the father asks, "You were never ill? Then what was the meaning
So
of the sad comedy in Damascus? Children can be
sorry.
ungrateful and forget, but parents can never get them out of their minds, and they all feel the cruelty of their behavior. Doesn't it pain you to see us overcome and humiliated with the shame you cast over our house? Vexed with grief, your mother found relief in death, but me? Do you think I haven't been hit hard by your desertion? If I held on, it was because I had hope in the Lord. I believed it had all just been a misunderstanding, that a mental disturbance had thrown you into incomprehension and the unwarranted criticisms of the world. I raised you with all the care that a father of our people is should devote to his only male child. You epitomize glamorous promises for a lineage. I sacrificed myself for you. I gave you my loving care and spread no efforts for you to have the most learned teachers. I watched over your youth and filled you with the tenderness of my soul. And this is the way you repay me, a dedication of your love to your love and home. So
Sal
then
could face. Oh,
go for it.
can I try, guys. I tried to do
Because
Sal's
it's
father's part, but the
adding
destiny cut my internet connection, and now I'm doing Sal's part. Okay.
of it.
So Sal could face several armed men without losing the unabashed courage that marked his disposition. He could reproach the condemnable behavior of others. He could sit on the most frightening tribunals for the examination of
He
human
could sit on the
hypocrisy,
most frightening tribunals for the examination of human hypocrisy.
but under the breath of his sacred paternal feelings, he did not react and began to weep.
You weep? I was never an example of such cowardice. I struggled bravely on the most difficult days, so that you lack nothing. Your moral weakness is a child of perjury and treason. Your tears come from unavoidable remorse. So, how could you have taken the path of abominable lies? With that purpose, did you create a scene in Damascus to repudiate the principles that have nourished you since birth? How could you have forsaken Sao, your brilliant career as a rabbi for whom we held out so much hope, and turn to the company of outcasts who have never had the longing tradition of a home? And so the father continues,
Dear, did you finish?
you're cutting,
So just
you're
because you
cutting.
guys who
Let
are
me just
watching,
finish. Let me go ahead and finish reading it, and maybe because you guys are cutting. And so it says here, um, that the
yes,
father kept on talking
because
to him and
my internet
literally
connection
putting
now is a little unstable.
it's we cannot hear your
Here,
brother.
guys, the internet connection here is
It's pretty. Come back. I'm here. How is that? Don't
not
worry about
good.
it.
Okay,
It's okay. Just
but yes,
okay. May I can we can't hear you in either case, but we're just gonna finish this off because I think and I know Daniel and
yes,
João, they'll
totally.
reset their connection so they can come back, right? Because we want to hear their thoughts. But just quickly, the father, right? Saul's father continues to really, really make him feel bad. So not only right now we just read that he's telling, well, what about all the teachings, right? That we've given you? You've had everything. You were there. And now he's asking him, when I heard that you were going to marry a girl of parents unknown to us, right? That was Abby or Abigail. I was surprised and waited for you to explain yourself in person, right? And then he continues, for more than 3 years, I have been waking up every day to reflect on your criminal behavior in detriment of your sacred duties. And of course, um, Saul responds calmly and beautifully, right? My father, that creature was a saint, referring to Abigail. God did not will for her to continue in this world. Perhaps if she were still alive, my mind would be better balanced for harmonizing my new life. Then the father says, a new life? What do you mean by that? And Saul wiped his tears and answered, I mean that what occurred in Damascus was not an illusion that changed, that Jesus had changed my life. And the father says, can you see that utter madness? Impossible. How can you forsake the love of your family, the venerable traditions of your name, and the sacred hopes of your loved ones to follow an unknown carpenter? And so it says here that Saul continued listening and kind of intaking this um, conversation, right? But he was still quiet. His eyes were watery, and the dad continues, and we notice the balance here of who's taking over the conversation. Like that dad is still like, he's never really asked him, like, are you okay? Right. And it says that when he walked into the house, they could barely recognize him. Like he really was different. And the father, instead of asking, are you okay, son? He's still like going at him. How can this be? If the disgraceful doctrine of the carpenter of Nazareth imposes sinful indifference on this most sacred ties of love, life, how can one deny how noxiousness and subversive it is? Would it be right to prefer a renegade who died between two criminals to your worthy and hardworking father who has grown old in honest service to God?
Yes,
And
now
so
that's a very that now we're in a very important part of the book, guys. This is very important. And in the following pages, we're gonna enter one of the most important part of the book. So pay attention.
it's beautiful.
Thank the Lord, my internet connection came back.
Okay, then go for it. You could be Saul now.
Peter said Saul in a pleading voice, Christ is the promised Savior.
Isaac's fury increased. You blasphemy! Have you no fear of insulting divine providence? The hopes of Israel could not possibly rest on a bro whose blood was shed in punishment between thieves. You're crazy. I demand you reconsider your behavior.
While he paused, the convert objected, It is certain that I have a blameworthy past when I did not hesitate to persecute the expressions of the truth. But from the last three years up to now, I do not recall anything that needs reconsideration. The old man seemed to reach the peak of his rage and exclaimed harshly.
I am so sorry that my words do not square with your disturbed mind. I can see that I have hoped in vain to die without hating anybody. Unfortunately, I am forced to recognize in your current decisions either a madman or a common criminal. Therefore, in order to define our positions clearly, I am asking you to choose once and for all between me or that despicable carpenter. Oof.
His father's
His father's voice choked and was
voice
hesitant at such an ultimatum, right? So we're like in a very important part of this because what happens
was
next?
choked and
So,
hesitant.
dear, you're cutting again.
So sorry, guys. The internet. I don't know why that's happening. I
Don't
do believe
know.
that that's because we have elections tomorrow here in Brazil. But let's keep going. When my internet connection gets better, I can intervene. Okay.
All right, let's finish off. Let's finish this conversation, right? And so Saul whispered and said, right? But Father, we both need Jesus. And the man was like, You've made your decision, Saul. You shall have nothing more with this house. What was so hardening here was that Saul felt this to his soul, right? The old man was still trembling, right? And this is like a typical family situation, right? With the dad, his pride, and um he's not following his heart but his pride, and that's why he's talking to him. So we see in the next paragraphs that Emmanuel describes Isaac really struggling with what is coming out of his mouth when he knows that um, he should be there for his son, but he isn't. And so this section ends with saying, would you add it by throwing me out? So Saul is asking me, are you really throwing me out? And so now we go to the next section, which was my part. But I don't know. We're good? Okay, so now we see this
I'm
dialogue.
good to keep on going. My internet's going out and coming
And
back, but
we're,
we're good to
we're
keep on going.
good. Friends, as the teacher, you should see the things. We get a lot of interruptions. We start a lesson that
Yes.
happens, so we're good. All
Yes.
right. So now we go into this other part. So Saul leaves. Saul cannot um, believe what his dad had just told him, right? And the dad, Isaac, still tells him, You better rephrase that because no one is throwing you out. You yourself have completely deserted your friends and your purest emotions. You are in need. It is only right then that you ask the carpenter for what you need. He who committed such absurdities ought to be powerful enough to help you. So, in other words, that I say, hey, you don't want to choose us, your home, the laws, what you're used to, then you better ask Jesus, right? Since you're following him to go on and help you. So Emmanuel describes this grief that Saul carried with him from that moment. He says here that even when he had that apparition of of Jesus and the light, and when he got blind and all that confusion that he had, all those emotions, that still did not compare to the pain that what he was experiencing by his father's words that literally like kicked him out. And then this is what Saul says: "Then goodbye, Father. You have spoken rightly, for I am sure the Messiah will not abandon me." And then the next scene, Saul walks out, and Saul really really was struggling with this. He was thinking a lot about what does this mean, and all of a sudden, just so we can get um, further into the story, uh, somebody called him as he was walking away, kind of in distress, and it was one of his father's servants, and he says that here, my father has this for you, and it was money. And Saul said he was like, I don't want to take that money. You know, he just threw me out of the house. And then he felt, though, that this was something for him to learn humility. So he ends up taking that money with him and said that that was probably one of the hardest trials that he had to learn. Even some of the other things in his past became very difficult. I mean, they were very different. And so Saul takes the money, takes his thoughts, and goes and eats. And he's very indifferent now, right? His pain, his heart is in pain, and he's feeling all of these things. And he says, I just need to get away. So he goes into solitude, right? He has that opportunity and he's into that situation. And he says he was so profoundly touched that today he was escaping like a common criminal, right? A man who would walk the streets, a man who had power. And now he finds himself without family because his dad just kicked him out, and like they cannot find a place right for him to go, as our brother João read with us, right? That they were telling him like, Saul, you cannot go here, you're causing a disturbance, as he did like everywhere he would go. And so he's trying to make sense of everything. And then he had an epitome when he was in this process. He was now beginning to grasp the fact that starting life all over did not mean returning to the activities of his former home. It meant beginning an inner effort from the depths of his soul, forgetting the smallest vestige of the past in words to become a different man altogether. So he thought, you know what, going back home, doing everything, everything will come back. But that's not the way that he's a different man now. So his beginning is going to be completely different. So he's very emotional, and, you know, he's still like crying and stuff, which is something very special considering that he was a man, and it was like from that time, right? And now his father too was obviously, we read in the other section, his dad was never one to cry around him. So we start to think about him, who what he meant. He represented already a different man spiritually, but also in the culture of that time and that progress, right? Which is very beautiful to see that happening. um and then in this vibration, this is the most beautiful part. He says, soon I was swept by this quietude. He felt like sleep was coming over him, but he didn't know if he was sleeping or if he was awake. Everything spoke to him of a different world. Gentle harmonies were sounding in his ear, somewhat like a cavatina being played far away, right? On divine harps and lutes. He wanted to identify the landscape, to define its contours, and to enrich his observations. But he had this profound sentiment of peace that overpowered him completely. In a few instants, guess who appears before him? The one and only Stephen and Abby, or Abigail. And it says the way Emmanuel describes her is that she was beautiful, young and beautiful, dressed in garments so white and radiant that they looked more like shrouds of translucent snow. Of course, Sal just knelt. That brought him to his knees, and he cried even more. A poor baby at this time, right? And Stephen says, get up, Saul, right? And then Abigail very sweetly asks, "What is this you weep? Would you feel so discouraged when your task has just begun?" And so it says, he now back on his feet, Saul continued to cry. But it was interesting. These tears were not just a relief; they were joy. Like, can you imagine, like, everything? And Saul, this is what Abby tells him after kissing his brow. I mean, Stephen says, "Saul, do not stay stuck in the past. Who in the world is exempt from wrongdoings? Only Jesus was sinless." Now remember, friends, that this was after the part that his father had kicked him out. He wants to be by himself and he's having all these process. And all of a sudden, Steve and Abby appear. And it's okay, they tell him. And the last thing that Stephen tells them was very powerful, which is the end of this section for today. "We shall never lack a home. Our home shall be in the hearts of all those who come our way. As for children, we have the immense family that Jesus has bequeathed us in his mercy. The children of Calvary are our children too. They are everywhere, awaiting their inheritance from the Savior." Saul understood the loving admonishment and stored it in the core of his heart. So, yes, they were tough on him. It was like tough love, but they were very gentle the way that it was. And of course, this part we're going to discuss. Hopefully, our connections are back because we want to go to the mediums book because that right there was incredible. But I don't know if we want to, before we get to that, let's try our connections here.
No, totally. I totally agree that we go to the medium's book to think everything that is happening in this part of the book. Bro, are you able to talk with us now?
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, thank the
But
Lord.
I could hear you all the time.
Perfect.
I'm
Uh,
aware.
do you wanna say something?
Oh, not now. You
No, not
can
now.
go on. My,
Okay.
you
No.
name my turn.
Okay. Dear, do you wanna say something right now after you? Okay.
Of course. I mean, this is a beautiful thing combining the three parts. There's a beautiful psalm in the Bible. And I remember being young too. Maybe some of us went back to that time when we told our families and they didn't understand that we were spiritists, right? And some of us, like my dad, he was very tough on me. I would hide Chico's books in my room. He found the books. He laid them all on the table and said, "You're gonna go to hell," you know. And he did disown me, but in a way he changed a little bit until he had to process that. And I remember going to my room crying, and at that time I was talking to the Bible because I was still very new. And in Psalms 27 verse 10 it says, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." Right? So again, we are reminded that we're not alone, as we saw through that. We are not alone. And that was something that Saul was teaching us, but we also saw, which I thought was beautiful, it was so hard for him. Like, for him to feel more emotional the way Manuel described him, like, wow. And I mean, our families make a huge part of who we are and the acceptance, right, of who we are. And when we don't have that, sometimes we think we're not loved, but we are loved. And I think it's beautiful for us to be reminded to not give up. And I know that Andre Luis, in one of his books, I think it's The Messengers. There's a case study on that as well, where the lady said, "I don't have my family support," and the answers were, "You could have served in silence. You don't always need to be, like, find ways to do it." And so I think that that's the message before we get to the mediumistic part.
Yes, beautiful, dear. I also want to comment that in the codification, Kardec brings us three types of villains: pride, vanity, and selfishness. And he explains to us how these villains they oppose to one very important virtue that we all should keep and try to improve: charity. And in this situation where we see Saul of Tarsus and his father fighting over Jesus, we see that his father's he does love him. We see that, and we see that he's a little hesitant, that he's trying to make his son to come back and to forsake that Christ that he was thinking was a sorcerer, a bad man, a villain. But the thing here is his love is not bigger than his pride. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, when his pride is bigger, he stays with it and he does not choose love. And that's why Kardec brings us these three villains: pride, vanity, and selfishness. Because if we have them, we are not going to be able to love and afterwards practice charity. This is impossible, and we do have to fight against these sentiments when we see that we are carrying them and expressing them to others and to ourselves. Because as we have talked here multiple times, Jesus brings us that love is the law and that we should love others and ourselves as well. This is important. Having self-esteem is a very important thing to when it comes to being a Christian and being a spiritist. Bro, do you want to say something?
Yes, I have some notes. So the first thing would like to point out is spiritual influence. This is a very natural thing, and in Medium's book, I think it's the second chapter. Kardec wrote about the supernatural and the miracle. Well, any of the spiritual phenomena can be linked to something supernatural because they belong to the divine laws. So it is natural. They are natural. Considering something supernatural is like considering that that phenomenon observed breaks the laws of the universe, of God's law. And it is not possible. Even God himself never breaks his laws. He does everything in according to nature because they are perfect. And if we just because we are too ignorant to understand the phenomenon, the causes, uh, it, it is no proof that it can happen according to natural laws. So when John and Peter reflected in João's part uh, about uh, yes, this it wouldn't be fair for a still tender grapevine to strive with the stalwart fig tree, and they regard this intelligence to spiritual influence directly from Jesus. And I've experienced some influence like that, like this. I'll say I'll talk about some personal experience, but in work I felt like something bad from a colleague was coming towards me. He would do harm to me, and I noticed that uh, in advance. So I was driving home, and I reflected, what should I do according to the gospel lessons? And according to Spiritism, should I get back on him? Should I prevent his actions? What should I do? What's the right thing to do? So it was like a very strong voice, a very loud voice, and very quick came to me, like do nothing, and just that. It was so strong, I almost stopped the car uh, to analyze that. But I did that. I did obey this voice, and it all came out just well, and everything went fine, and I was safe. I don't want to give much details because it was at work, but you know, if we can, if you, I don't have any kind of mediumship, not evident one, but I could hear this, I could sense it, and if you have your heart open to those kinds of events in our lives, it can happen to everybody. It is up to us to understand and to rationally analyze what uh, uh, what we are able to do. So it's completely natural. And I talk all of this because of the movies, the shows, what people talk around about mediumship and spiritual phenomena and spiritual influence, like it's something bad, it's something I don't know, outrageous. Some people make out of business um, out of those events. So it's not all natural. It should not become a cause of surprise to us. The other part I'd like to point out is what uh, Nora said in the last part. The harsh, the harsh days, uh, the harsh situation that Saul faced with his father. So the true trial that becomes alongside with the gospel, it is never glorious to the eyes of the world, and that's for sure. It is hard and it's humiliating and always touch the very exposed nerve, wherever exposed nerve you have. So it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be hard. And our missions, I'm saying that this because every time Saul faced something difficult, like uh, in Jerusalem, he started to think about fighting and becoming a martyr. He wants all like he doesn't even think about it. He just feel his ego growing and taking over his thoughts, and he seeks for glory. And many times in life we act like that. But the true trial, on according to Jesus' lessons, will make us small and hurt and humiliated, and this is what will make us great in the spiritual world. We will evolve through this harsh experience. So these are very tough lessons, and we have to be prepared. They come whenever we are ready, and when our mentors decide we are ready to take these lessons. So all that is up to us is to study, to read, to be ready, and keep our hearts open. That's it. Thanks.
All right, that's beautiful, brother. I think our brother João froze for a little bit, but he'll come back in the conversation. So now
Yes,
let's
guys, my
talk
internet connection got a little slow again. So sorry. Dear,
about.
I wanted, and bro, thank you so much.
I
I
know we
even
only
got,
have 1 minute, but I think it's important maybe to talk
yes.
about the operation. I don't know.
No, it is important. I just, before we start that part, I wanted to ask Daniel if he thinks that was, that experience that he had was about hearing mediumship or intuition mediumship.
Intuition. I asked
Okay, nice.
for I asked for help, and it came. It
Nice. That's very
was
nice.
that kind of mediumship. It's like here in Brazil, between spiritists, we say that everybody has an antenna.
Great. Thank you,
So
bro. No, go ahead. Do you wanna say something? No, dear. I wanna know which part have you chosen from the medium's book. Maybe we have chosen the same.
Probably the same, which
Yeah.
is the visual manifestations.
Yes, yes, we are in the
Yeah,
same page. Okay, so you can
perfect.
go ahead. Since my internet connection is not that great and we have chosen the same thing, you can present the part. Okay.
So I think today my job's to read and then you guys can discuss. I feel like that's so I would just simply read. One other question is, so what is the purpose of spirits who appear with good intentions, right? Because we know that Stephen and Abigail are higher order spirits, and it's really to console those who are mourning, right? They might also appear to give advice and sometimes to ask for assistance for themselves. So that's pretty much, I think, what was happening on here. And I did make some annotations just to kind of like what's happening. And I don't know if you want to come in on questions 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Those questions talk a little bit about what is happening with the with how is it that they're actually appearing, right? There's this whole spiritual phenomena. So I'll bring it in for Joan to go ahead and describe what that's happening.
Just which is the number of the question you just read?
Um, this is questions. So it's chapter 4,
Yes, but the
chapter
question.
6, questions 19, any of them, maybe even 22, right?
So
It's
you
just
read the 22.
I'm paraphrasing only because we don't
Okay, 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 okay. So I'm gonna bring the first ones because these first questions they explain to us how this occurs. Okay.
have
So question 21, Allan Kardec asked, "How does a spirit make himself visible?" The spirit answered, "As in all other manifestations, by employing certain properties of the perispirit, which may be made to undergo a variety of modifications at the will of the spirit." Question 22, Allan Kardec asked, "Can that which is the spirit himself be made visible, or can it only be manifested by the perispirit?" Answer: to you, in your materialized state, spirits can only manifest themselves with the aid of their semi material envelope, which is the intermediary that enables them to act on your senses. It is with this envelope that they sometimes appear to you under the human form or any other, whether in your dreams or in your awakened state, whether in the light or in the dark. 23. um, Question: is it by the condensation of the fluid of the perispirit that the spirit renders himself visible? Answer: condensation is not the right word, but rather a term of comparison which may aid you to form an approximative idea of the phenomenon, for there is in reality no condensation. The combination of fluids produces in the perispirit a peculiar condition to which nothing in your experience offers any analogy, and which renders it perceptible by you. And I'm gonna read the 24. Are the spirits who appear to us inaccessible to the touch, could they not be laid hold of? Answer: when in their normal state, you could no more seize them than you could seize a shadow, but they can nevertheless make themselves felt by your sense of touch and leave traces of their presence. They can even in certain cases render themselves tangible for a short time, which proves that there is something material in common between them and you. Guys, this is really important because um, when we're talking about spirituality, most times we confuse what is a perispirit and what is a spirit. We are never in touch with the spirit itself. That thing that the spirit's books brings us as an intelligence. So of course it is not material, but we have a couple and multiple contacts with the perispirit. When we see something, when we say that we see a spirit, as we are seeing here in the book, that Saul was seeing, and Jazel and Abigail, he is seeing their perispirits, and of course, we can be in touch with beloved ones perispirit during our sleep or while we are awake. This and in both cases, as the spirits brought us here in the medium's book, we are in contact with the perispirit. This is a very interesting conversation, because we have to make a couple of differences here. A person that has not the mediumship of seeing spirits can see spirits while she or he is dreaming, because this is another phenomenon. But in most cases, for example, when we are participating of a spiritual meeting where the spirits will manifest, this job, this part of seeing the spirits and tell everybody how they look, what they're doing, this part is with the mediums who can see the spirits, because this is a very specific mediumistic gift. And as we will see later in the book, Saul of Tarsus will manifest multiple mediumship gifts, and the medium's book brings us in a specific part that as we get more elevated in terms of moral, as we dematerialize our spirits while we are incarnated, we can get of course, a mediumship is restricted in any case, but as we elevate our spirit, while incarnate beings, we can have more access to the spiritual world. Do you guys wanna say something, Daniel, Nora?
Hey, João, I'd like to come in this part. I'll just try to make things, um, you know, let's talk from the beginning.
Yes, easier.
Uh, God, we have three elements in the universe: God, spirits, and matter. So God is the only creator, and the spirits are the intelligent and alive part of the creation, and matter is the tool, is the tool that spirits use to evolve and to learn and to act. Okay, so everything that is not God is whether spirit or matter. So we have now to understand that matter and spirits being different means that our body is, let's say, is a tool that we have, that we use to learn, but this is not us. So therefore, those bodies that we use to walk on earth, they will change. How that happens, and that a spirit can use a body, act over a matter. So that's the major concern on spirit's book. I'm sorry, medium's book. As God created matter, He has many, uh, let's say, states. We in science we usually talk about uh, gas, solids, and liquids, but some uh, talk about plasma and some other forms. But there are uncountable millions of states. And one of these states um, allows the spirit to shape a perispirit, which is matter. It is not intelligent. It has not any kind of power and or energy. It is completely like asleep, just like any board or any stone. So um, a spirit is completely non-material, but it is individual and intelligent. It thinks and it evolves unlimitedly, but it will never become a new creator. Uh, since a spirit can think, it produces energy throughout the universe. Every time that we think is like uh, a small rock that hits the water and the waves spread around. So it goes throughout the universe. And since there are matter in all universes, in all kinds of states, we, uh, without perceiving, without wanting, we shape this matter around uh, ourselves in a shape that it is not the shape of the spirit, but the shape that he think he has. So a spirit can change his forms. He can believe that he is a form or another form, and he can reshape his appearance. So this is why a spirit can appear like a man or as a woman, and sometimes they talk about uh, partially human, partially animals, kind of beasts, and this is because these spirits really believe that they look like this. So this is the mental field that we talk about. The mind field is pure energy uh, emanated by the spirits that shape this matter around the spirit. So this is the perispirit. And when the spirits are ready to reincarnate, before it becomes linked to a mother's womb, he receives that new matter, which we call vital fluid. It's a new modification that is not dense enough to become a rock, but uh, light enough to not be seen and pondered or touched. So it, like, let's say it's the fuel at the tank of a car, and it will make any matter obey to the will of the incarnated spirit. So this is how we can make our bodies move and obey to our will. This fluid can be donated, uh, actually being expelled out of the medium's body and be attached to any kind of matter, solid matter, and another spirit can use this fluid to make something move. So a desk can move, a chair or a paper or a pen. So this is how the states of matter can allow our spirit to act over, to manipulate matter. And this, there is no other way, because when we are uh, disincarnated, we can't move things. We can't act over matter. We can't interfere. We cross high distance and grounds and walls. There's no up and down. There's no gravity over us. Only when there is fluid, vital fluid in between the spirit and the matter. I've talked a little bit, but I think
No,
I've
no,
helped.
no. Thank you, bro, so much. It was very good to hear, and we learned a lot. Before I pass the word to Nora, I just want to bring a couple of comments as well. As Daniel said, the universe is composed by three elements: matter, God, matter, and spirit. But there's a very important thing to for us to acknowledge here. And as Daniel said, spirit is a spirit and matter is a matter, and they are different things. But there's a mentor in one of Andrelli's books that tells us this: not even the highest spirit would dare to say where matter ends and spirit begins, because of course they are different things, but we would be naive if we think that they are separated, or that we can reach this point where something is totally matter and something is totally spirit. Because as we have in the spirit's book question 540, we begin as atoms, and we will end as it's not angels the word, but another thing like archangels. I don't know if how that's is said in English, but that's a postulate that the spirit's book brings us. So this is really important. And as Daniel brought, the Paris spirit, it's much more um how can I put this? The Paris spirit is much more influenced by the power of our mind when we are discarnated. But of course, that those spirits that are not elevated, or even those spirits that are evil, they cannot think that there are angels and fool us as if they were angels, because the medium's book brings us that there are angels that are doing what they have to do. And another thing that I wanted to bring before I pass the word to Nora is that, as Daniel said, we have our God that is the creator, but we are co-creators. Our minds, they have the power to create, and because we are spirits, that Jesus brings us in the gospel. He was not telling us that we are God, but that we have a couple of powers that are that God have, that God has. Dear, do you wanna say something?
No, I think you guys said it all, so I'm good. Thank you.
Bro, do you wanna say something?
No, just thanks for another encounter, another meeting. So so important.
We have passed the time a little bit today, but I do want to thank my two great friends here, Daniel and Nora. I'm learning a lot always with you too, and I just need to say thank you both. And I do want to thank everybody that's here with us right now. I have read a couple of comments. Thank you, girls, a lot, and those sending comments because are watching in demand. Thank you guys a lot. Yes, Nora posted a couple of comments here for us. So guys, thank you so much. We're going to be here next week, okay? Bye bye. Thank you so much. See you later.